A naive girl was kicked out by her in-laws, not knowing she's actually a billionaire heiress. The New York skyline glittered through the penthouse window, a dazzling contrast to the stifling air inside the Dawson family's Upper East Side apartment. Emily Harper stood in the kitchen, her hands raw from scrubbing pots, the faint hum of the dishwasher, her only companion. At 28, she was the wife of Michael Dawson, the ambitious but struggling CEO of Dawson Tech, a once promising startup now teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. For 5 years, Emily had poured her heart into supporting Michael, working late nights at the company, managing their finances, and keeping the Dawson household running. Yet despite her efforts, she was invisible to the family she served. Her mother-in-law, Margaret Dawson, a woman with a sharp tongue and sharper disdain, treated Emily like a servant rather than a daughter-in-law. "You're lucky we let you stay here," Margaret would say, her eyes narrowing as she sipped her evening martini. A girl from nowhere, with no family to speak of, Michael could have done better. Emily bit her lip, swallowing the hurt, as she always did. She loved Michael, or at least the memory of the man who'd saved her from a car accident 6 years ago, pulling her from the wreckage with a gentleness she'd never forgotten. That act of heroism had bound her to him, a debt she felt she could never repay. So she endured Margaret's insults, the endless chores, and the cold distance growing between her and her husband. The apartment was quiet tonight, save for the clink of dishes as Emily stacked them in the cupboard. Michael's younger brother Ethan lounged in the living room, scrolling through his phone, occasionally barking orders. "Em, grab me a soda," he called without looking up. Emily sighed, fetching the drink and placing it on the coffee table. Ethan barely acknowledged her, his eyes glued to the screen. She was used to this being the invisible cog in the Dawson machine. At the office, she was no different. As Michael's assistant, she handled everything from client pitches to payroll, her sharp mind catching details others missed. She'd single-handedly secured a $50 million deal with Harper Industries, a financial giant based in Chicago, which had kept Dawson Tech afloat. Yet no one thanked her. Michael barely noticed her contributions, too consumed with boardroom battles and his own ambitions. Emily told herself it was temporary, that once the company stabilized, Michael would see her again, the woman he'd married, not the maid or the secretary she'd become. Tonight, though, something felt off. Michael was late as usual, but the apartment buzzed with an unfamiliar tension. Margaret was in the dining room whispering on the phone, her voice low but laced with excitement. "She's perfect, Michael." "You'll see," Emily overheard as she passed by with a stack of laundry. Her stomach twisted. Margaret's tone was too warm, too conspiratorial for a casual call. Emily set the laundry down and crept closer, her heart pounding. "Sarah's back in town," Margaret continued. "She's sophisticated, cultured, not like that plain Jane you married. You should have chosen her from the start." Emily froze. Sarah Bennett, Michael's high school sweetheart, the one he'd dated before Emily came into his life. Sarah, the daughter of a wealthy Manhattan family, had left for London years ago, but her shadow lingered in Margaret's stories, a constant reminder of Emily's supposed inadequacy. Emily's hands trembled as she returned to the kitchen, her mind racing. Why was Sarah back? And why was Margaret so eager to talk about her? The front door clicked open, and Michael strode in his tailored suit, rumpled from a long day. His dark hair was disheveled, but his blue eyes, usually so focused, seemed distant. "Emily, we need to talk," he said, his voice clipped. She wiped her hands on a dish towel, her pulse quickening. "What's wrong?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Michael hesitated, glancing at Margaret, who'd appeared in the doorway, a smug smile curling her lips. "Sarah's in town," he said finally. She's working with us on a new project." I didn't want you to hear it from someone else." Emily's heart sank. "A project," she echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. Michael nodded, avoiding her gaze. "She's got connections in Europe. It could save the company." Emily wanted to believe him, but the look in his eyes, guarded almost guilty, told her there was more. Before she could press further, Margaret chimed in. "It's about time you brought in someone with real class, Michael. Not some country girl who thinks she's one of us." The words stung, but Emily held her ground. "I've done everything for this family," she said, her voice shaking. "I've worked day and night for your company, Michael. I deserve better than this." Margaret laughed, a cold, cutting sound. "Deserve? You're lucky we keep you around, Emily. You're nothing without us." That night, Emily lay awake in the guest room. She'd long since stopped sharing a bed with Michael, who claimed he needed space to focus on work. Her mind replayed Margaret's words, Michael's evasiveness, and the name Sarah Bennett. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was unraveling. The next morning, she arrived at Dawson Tech's sleek Manhattan office, her eyes scanning the open-plan floor, where employees buzzed with their usual urgency. She was reviewing contracts when Sarah Bennett walked in, her presence commanding the room. Tall and elegant, with sleek blonde hair and a designer dress, Sarah exuded the confidence Emily had never been allowed to cultivate. "Emily Wright," Sarah said, her smile sharp as a blade. "Michael's told me so much about you. I'm here to help with the Harper deal." Emily's stomach churned. The Harper deal was her project, her lifeline to proving her worth. "I've got it under control," Emily replied, forcing a smile. Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Oh, I'm sure you do, but Michael thought I could elevate things." The implication was clear: Emily wasn't enough. Over the next week, Sarah's presence became inescapable. She attended meetings Emily had organized, took credit for her ideas, and charmed the staff with her polished demeanor. Whispers followed Emily in the break room. "Sarah's so sophisticated, Michael's lucky she's back." Emily tried to focus, but each day chipped away at her resolve. She caught Michael and Sarah laughing together in his office, their ease a stark contrast to the strained silences between her and Michael. One evening, as Emily stayed late to finalize a presentation, she overheard a conversation that shattered her world. Michael and Sarah were in the conference room, their voices low but clear through the glass door. "She's not cut out for this," Sarah said, her tone dripping with pity. "You need someone who can keep up, Michael. Someone like me." Michael sighed. "I know. I thought Emily was, I don't know, grateful for what I did for her. That accident 6 years ago, she thinks I saved her life. I couldn't tell her the truth." Emily's breath caught. "The truth? What truth?" She leaned closer, her heart hammering. "You let her believe it was you," Sarah said, laughing softly. "You're too kind. Michael, she's been riding that debt ever since, hasn't she?" Michael didn't respond, but his silence was answer enough. Emily stumbled back to her desk, her vision blurring with tears. The accident, the moment she'd built her marriage on, was a lie. Michael hadn't saved her. Her mind flashed to that night 6 years ago, the screech of tires, the flames, and a shadowy figure pulling her from the wreckage. She'd woken in the hospital to Michael's face, his hand in hers, and assumed he was her savior. That belief had fueled her loyalty, her willingness to endure his family's cruelty. But now, doubt gnawed at her. Who had really saved her? And why had Michael let her believe a lie, the betrayal cut deeper than Margaret's insults or Sarah's condescension? Emily thought of the years she'd spent slaving for the Dawsons, the nights she'd cried herself to sleep, the dreams she'd buried to keep their family afloat. She'd given everything, and for what? To be mocked, sidelined, and replaced. The next morning, Emily walked into the Dawson apartment with a new resolve. She found Margaret in the living room flipping through a magazine. "I'm done," Emily said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Margaret looked up, her eyes narrowing. "Done? You don't get to be done, girl. You think you can just walk out. You're nothing without this family." Emily shook her head. "I've given you 5 years, Margaret. I've cooked your meals, cleaned your house, and saved your son's company. I'm not nothing. I'm just done with you." Margaret's face reddened, but before she could retort, Michael walked in. "Emily, what's going on?" he asked, his brow furrowed. She met his gaze, searching for the man she'd once loved. "I heard you last night," she said quietly, "about the accident. You didn't save me, did you?" Michael's face paled. "Emily, She cut him off. "I want a divorce, Michael. I'm leaving." His eyes widened, but he didn't protest. Margaret, however, laughed. "Good riddance. You'll be back begging when you realize you're nothing without us." Emily didn't respond. She packed a single suitcase, her hands steady now, and walked out of the apartment, the weight of 5 years lifting with each step. As she stepped into the chilly New York morning, Emily felt a spark of something she hadn't felt in years: freedom. She didn't know where she'd go, but she knew she couldn't stay. The city stretched before her, vast and unforgiving, but for the first time, she felt ready to face it. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in years. "James," she said when a familiar voice answered. "It's Emily. I'm coming home." On the other end, her older brother, James Harper, let out a relieved laugh. "About time, sis. We've been waiting for you." Emily hung up, her heart racing. The Harpers, her real family, the one she'd left behind to marry Michael, were in Chicago, and with them, the truth about who she really was. As she hailed a cab to Penn Station, Emily Harper, the woman who'd been dismissed as a nobody, took her first step toward reclaiming her life and the legacy she'd never known she had. The Chicago skyline loomed ahead as Emily Harper stepped off the train at Union Station, the wind whipping through her coat. The city felt both foreign and familiar, a place she hadn't called home in years. At 28, she was returning to the life she'd left behind, a life she'd hidden, to become Michael Dawson's wife. Her brother James Harper waited at the platform, his tall frame and warm smile a stark contrast to the cold dismissal she'd faced in New York. "Emily," he said, pulling her into a hug, "you're finally back where you belong." She managed a small smile, but the weight of the past week, the divorce, the betrayal, the lies about the accident 6 years ago, still pressed on her chest. James drove her through the bustling streets to the Harper family's estate in Lake Forest, a sprawling mansion that screamed wealth and power. As they passed through the iron gates, Emily's breath caught. This was the world she'd walked away from, the world her father, Charles Harper, had built as the head of Harper Industries, the most influential financial conglomerate in America. She'd kept her identity a secret, even from Michael at her uncle's request, to help the Dawson family without bruising Michael's pride. Now that secrecy felt like a chain she'd finally broken. Inside the mansion, Charles Harper greeted her with a gruff but tender embrace. "You should have come home sooner," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We never stopped looking out for you." Emily's eyes stung. She'd distanced herself from her family to protect Michael's ego, believing he'd saved her life in that car accident. But the truth revealed in that overheard conversation with Sarah Bennett had shattered her illusions. "I'm sorry, Dad," she said softly. "I thought I was doing the right thing." James, leaning against the fireplace, crossed his arms. "You did what you thought was right, Em. But now it's time to be you again. The real Emily Harper." Over dinner, they filled her in on the family's empire, Harper Industries controlled investments across tech, real estate, and finance, with a net worth that dwarfed most corporations. Emily had been shielded from this world, raised humbly at her mother's insistence before her passing, but now she was ready to step into her legacy. The next morning, Emily walked into the gleaming headquarters of Harper Industries in downtown Chicago. James had arranged for her to join as a strategic consultant, a role that would let her flex the skills she'd honed at Dawson Tech. The office buzzed with energy employees nodding respectfully as she passed. Her first task was to oversee a new investment in a cutting-edge AI startup, a project that could redefine Harper's tech portfolio. As she dove into the work analyzing data and leading meetings, Emily felt a spark of confidence she hadn't known in years. She was good at this damn good, and for the first time she wasn't in Michael's shadow. But the peace didn't last. A week into her new role, whispers began circulating among the staff. "She's James Harper's mistress," one employee murmured in the break room. How else does a nobody climb to a top position so fast? Emily's blood ran cold. The rumors were vicious, painting her as a gold digger who'd seduced her way into the company. She recognized the playbook. It was the same tactic Sarah and Margaret had used at Dawson Tech to undermine her. Determined to uncover the source, Emily enlisted the help of Daniel Carter, her childhood friend and a brilliant lawyer based in Chicago. Daniel had been a constant in her life, always there, with a quick laugh or a steady hand when she needed it. They met at a coffee shop near the Loop, his hazel eyes scanning her with concern. "You look like you're carrying the world, Em," he said, sliding her a latte. She explained the rumors, her voice tight with frustration. "It's Sarah," she said. "I know it. She's in Chicago now, working with a rival firm. She's trying to ruin me again." Daniel's jaw tightened. "We'll find proof. Nobody messes with you on my watch." Over the next few days, Daniel dug into Sarah's activities, uncovering emails that suggested she'd hired a PR firm to spread the rumors. But that wasn't all. Daniel found evidence that Sarah had also contracted a group of hackers to sabotage Harper Industries' AI project, planting bugs in the software to delay its launch. Emily presented the findings to James, who was livid. "This ends now," he said, pacing his office. "We'll hit back hard." Together they devised a plan to expose Sarah at an upcoming industry gala, where Harper Industries would unveil their AI initiative. Emily spent sleepless nights preparing her mind, torn between the thrill of reclaiming her power and the lingering pain of Michael's betrayal. He'd been calling her, leaving voicemails that alternated between apologies and accusations. "Emily, I messed up," he'd say in one message, only to follow with, "Are you really working for Harper Industries? What's going on with you and James?" She ignored him, but each call reopened old wounds. She'd loved Michael once, believed in the man she thought had saved her. Now she wasn't sure who he was or who she'd been to him. The night of the gala arrived, held at a glittering ballroom in the Drake Hotel. Emily wore a sleek navy gown, her dark hair swept up, exuding a confidence she was only beginning to feel. She mingled with industry leaders, her poise drawing admiring glances. James introduced her as Emily Harper, our new strategic lead, and the room buzzed with curiosity. Across the crowd, she spotted Sarah, radiant in a crimson dress, her smile as sharp as ever. Michael was there too, his eyes locking onto Emily with a mix of regret and confusion. As the presentation began, Emily took the stage, her voice steady, as she outlined the AI project's potential. Then she dropped the bombshell. "We've recently uncovered attempts to sabotage this initiative," she said, her gaze sweeping the room. "Thanks to our team's diligence, we've traced the culprits." She signaled to James, who played a recording of Sarah's emails, her voice clear as she instructed the hackers. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Sarah's face paled. her composure crumbling as she stammered, "This is a setup." But the evidence was damning, and security escorted her out, as whispers turned to murmurs of outrage. Emily should have felt triumphant, but as she stepped off the stage, her heart was heavy. Michael approached his expression a mix of guilt and defiance. "Emily, can we talk?" he asked, his voice low. "I didn't know about Sarah's plans. I swear." She studied him, the man she'd once built her world around. "You let me believe you saved me," she said quietly. "You let me live a lie for 5 years." Why? Michael ran a hand through his hair, his eyes darting away. "I thought it would keep you with me. I thought you'd leave if you knew the truth." His words hit like a punch. He'd manipulated her, used her gratitude to trap her in a life of servitude. "We're done, Michael," she said, turning away. "Don't call me again." As she walked back to James, who gave her a proud nod, she felt a weight lift. She was no longer the naive girl who'd married Michael Dawson. She was Emily Harper, and she was just beginning to discover her strength. But the victory was short-lived. 2 nights later, Emily was driving home from the office when a black SUV swerved into her lane, forcing her off the road. Her car spun, crashing into a ditch with a sickening crunch. Pain seared through her head as she struggled to stay conscious, the world blurring around her. Through the haze, she saw a figure approach Sarah, her face cold and triumphant. "You should have stayed gone," Sarah hissed, before disappearing into the night. Emily's vision faded, but her last thought was of Daniel, his steady voice promising to protect her. When she woke, she was in a hospital bed, machines beeping softly. Daniel sat beside her, his face etched with worry. "You're okay," he said, squeezing her hand. "We got you." Emily's throat tightened. "Sarah," she whispered. "She did this." Daniel's eyes darkened. "I know, and we're going to make her pay." As Emily drifted back to sleep, her mind raced with questions. Who had saved her from that accident 6 years ago? If not Michael? And how far would Sarah go to destroy her? One thing was certain. Emily Harper was no longer a victim. She was a fighter, and she'd see this through to the end. Emily Harper woke to the sterile hum of the hospital room, the Chicago skyline a faint glow through the window blinds. Her head throbbed from the car accident, a concussion leaving her groggy, but the pain was nothing compared to the fire in her chest. Sarah Bennett had tried to kill her, and the betrayal stung deeper than the bruises on her body. At 28, Emily had already endured years of humiliation at the hands of the Dawson family, only to discover she was the heiress to Harper Industries, America's wealthiest financial empire. Now, lying in the hospital bed, she felt a clarity she hadn't known before. She wasn't just fighting for survival, she was fighting for her truth, her identity, and the life she deserved. Beside her, Daniel Carter, her childhood friend and a sharp-minded lawyer, sat with a laptop, his hazel eyes scanning documents. "You're awake," he said, his voice soft but urgent. "How do you feel?" Emily managed a weak smile. "Like I got hit by a truck, but I'm still here." Daniel's expression darkened. "Sarah's behind this, Em. We're building a case, but we need more evidence." Emily nodded, her mind flashing to Sarah's cold smirk as she'd stood over her wrecked car. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice. The hospital room door opened, and James Harper, her older brother, strode in his tailored suit, a stark contrast to the sterile surroundings. "Em, you scared the hell out of us," he said, pulling a chair beside her. "Dad's on his way from a meeting in London. He's furious." Emily's heart warmed at the thought of her father, Charles Harper the patriarch, who'd built an empire but always made time for her. "I'm okay, James," she said, her voice steadier now. "But Sarah can't get away with this." James exchanged a glance with Daniel. She won't. We've got people digging into her financials, her contacts, everything. If she hired someone to run you off the road, we'll find them. Emily's thoughts drifted to the accident 6 years ago, the one she'd believed Michael Dawson, her ex-husband, had saved her from. That lie had bound her to him, but Michael's recent confession that he'd only taken her to the hospital, not pulled her from the wreckage, had unraveled her past. "Daniel," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "do you know who really saved me back then?" Daniel's eyes softened, and he hesitated. "Let's focus on getting you better first, okay? We'll talk about that soon." Over the next few days, Emily recovered in the hospital, her strength returning with each visit from James and Daniel. Her father arrived, his presence commanding but tender, as he sat by her side, promising to protect her. "No one hurts my daughter," Charles said, his voice firm. "The Harpers don't play games." Emily felt a surge of pride. She was a Harper, not the invisible wife she'd been in New York. But the threat of Sarah loomed large. Daniel uncovered a trail of encrypted messages linking Sarah to a known fixer, a man named Victor Kane, who specialized in discreet jobs. The evidence was thin, but damning: a payment of $50,000 from Sarah's offshore account to Kane the day before Emily's accident. "It's not enough for an arrest," Daniel said, frustration etching his face. "We need something concrete, witnesses, footage, anything." Emily's resolve hardened. "Then we'll get it," she said. "Set up a trap. Sarah's desperate. She'll slip up." The plan came together swiftly. Harper Industries announced a press conference to reveal their AI project's next phase, a high-profile event that would draw Chicago's elite. Emily insisted on attending despite James's protests. "I'm not hiding," she told him. "Sarah needs to see I'm not broken." The night of the event, held at the Art Institute of Chicago, Emily stepped into the grand hall in a sleek emerald gown, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders. The room buzzed with anticipation, but Emily's eyes scanned for Sarah. She spotted her near the bar, whispering to a man in a dark suit, Victor Kane. Daniel, stationed nearby, gave Emily a subtle nod. They'd hired a private investigator to monitor Kane, planting a discreet camera in the venue to catch any incriminating moves. As Emily took the stage to introduce the AI project, she felt Sarah's glare burning into her. "Harper Industries is about innovation and integrity," Emily said, her voice carrying across the room. "We've faced challenges, but we've also uncovered attempts to undermine us, attempts that won't go unpunished." The crowd murmured, sensing the weight of her words. After her speech, Emily mingled with guests, keeping Sarah in her peripheral vision. As planned, Daniel leaked a fake document to Sarah's PR contact, suggesting Harper Industries had evidence of her involvement in the accident. The bait worked. Sarah, visibly rattled, slipped out to a secluded hallway, Kane trailing her. The investigator's camera caught everything, Sarah handing Kane a flash drive, her voice low but audible. "Make sure this disappears," she hissed. "No one can link it to me." Kane nodded, pocketing the drive. Emily's heart raced. This was the proof they needed. Daniel signaled security, who detained Sarah and Kane as they tried to leave. The flash drive contained deleted security footage from the night of Emily's accident, showing Kane's SUV forcing her car off the road. The evidence was airtight. The next morning, Chicago's headlines screamed, "Socialite Sarah Bennett arrested in corporate conspiracy and attempted murder." Emily watched the news from her hospital room, now cleared to leave. Sarah's arrest was only half the battle. Margaret Dawson, Michael's mother, had been complicit in spreading lies about Emily, and she needed to face consequences. James arranged a meeting with Margaret at a downtown law firm where Emily confronted her. "You called me worthless for 5 years." Emily said, her voice calm but unyielding. You helped Sarah ruin my reputation. Now you'll apologize publicly, or Harper Industries will sue the Dawson family for defamation." Margaret's face twisted with defiance, but the weight of the evidence, emails, recordings, and witness statements forced her hand. That evening, Margaret issued a televised apology, admitting to her role in slandering Emily. "I was wrong," she said, her voice stiff. "Emily Harper is a remarkable woman who deserved better." The words felt hollow, but they were a victory. Michael showed up at the Harper estate the next day, his face haggard. "Emily, I'm sorry," he said, standing in the foyer. "I didn't know Sarah would go this far. I should have protected you." Emily studied him, the man she'd once loved, now a stranger. "You let me believe a lie, Michael," she said. "You let your family treat me like dirt. I don't need your apologies, I've moved on." Michael's shoulders slumped, but Emily felt no pity. She was done carrying his burdens. As he left, Daniel appeared, his presence a quiet comfort. "There's something I need to tell you," he said, guiding her to the garden. "6 years ago, that accident, it wasn't Michael who saved you. It was me." Emily's breath caught. "You—" Daniel nodded, rolling up his sleeve to reveal a faint burn scar on his right wrist. "I pulled you from the car. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to feel obligated. But I've always cared about you, Em." Tears welled in her eyes. All those years she'd given her heart to the wrong man, while Daniel had quietly stood by her. The revelation shifted something in Emily. She'd spent years seeking validation from people who didn't deserve her, but now she saw her worth. A week later, at a quiet dinner with her family, Daniel took her hand under the table. "Emily Harper," he said, his voice steady. "I've loved you since we were kids. Will you marry me?" The ring he offered was simple, a single diamond that caught the light. Emily's heart swelled. She didn't need extravagance, only truth. "Yes," she whispered, and the room erupted in cheers from James and Charles. As they celebrated, Emily felt whole for the first time in years. Her journey wasn't just about reclaiming her identity as a Harper. It was about learning to value herself. She'd endured betrayal, cruelty, and near death, but she'd emerged stronger. At Harper Industries, Emily became a beacon for young women, launching a mentorship program to empower those facing workplace discrimination. Her story spread, inspiring others to stand up to injustice. The lessons were clear: self-respect is non-negotiable, and no one should dim their light to please others. Forgiveness. Emily learned didn't mean excusing harm, it meant freeing herself from its weight. And truth above all was her greatest ally. Living authentically as Emily Harper, daughter of a billionaire, but defined by her own strength, was her ultimate victory. As she stood with Daniel looking out over the Chicago skyline, she knew this was only the beginning of her story.